actually going to facilitate today for us. Matt, I don't know if you want to jump to the next slide, Matt, and introduce yourself. Or we can
Yeah.
introduce Sheila first.
Why don't you do that, Sheila?
So I'd like to introduce Sheila M, not to be confused with the other Sheila M. But Sheila and I have worked together, oh my gosh, fairly closely for almost over a year now. She is assistant principal over at Thomas Edison School in Union City. And Sheila's team deals with K through, am I going to say 6, Sheila?
Mm-hmm.
K through 6. And they have a high concentration of special education in her building. And she uses lots of different programs from Edmentum at her building to help her reach her students. And with that, I can hand it over to today's moderator today is going to be Matt Ferry, who is part of the New Jersey team. Lindsay is also on the call today. In regular times, you might see the three of us out at conferences, but right now you're going to see us on Zoom.
It's such a bummer. It's such a bummer. All these conferences going by and not getting to see everybody. So, yes, hi everybody. I'm Matt Ferry. I've been with Edmentum here for, this is my 4th school year. I count things in school years, not calendar years, but yeah, been working with a lot of school districts around New Jersey for a while, and I'm really excited to get this PLC format back. This was something that was really popular in the spring, and we were all learning every day. We were all learning from each other, and the purpose of today is not necessarily to talk about our specific products, if you will, and what we do with Edmentum. We really want to dip outside of our expertise and jump into your expertise and what you guys are seeing in the field, and get this hive mind going of just what has been happening under COVID. What were the expectations? What did we think was going to happen, and what maybe didn't happen, and how have we dealt with all of the curveballs? So, Sheila, thanks so much for jumping on with us today. Let's just get into the first question here.
Yep, and I just wanted to say really quick, so because we have a little bit of a smaller group, we want this to be as interactive as possible. I know Sheila mentioned that earlier. So
yeah, absolutely.
Just want to let you know, guys, I'm actually going to be monitoring the chat during this. Please make sure you chat in any questions, any comments that you want to make regarding our questions, or if you even want to jump off of mute, please feel free, and let's make this just an awesome conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Sheila, we're going to get into the first question here. So how do you see COVID impacting your students currently, or even back in the spring, or, how did you connect the dots when we got back together in the fall? How is that going?
Well, for us, it's a continuation of the spring, because in our district, our students still haven't come back to the building.
Yeah.
So just kind of taking off from where we left off back in June, but with a better perspective on what the kids needed. So technology wise, now we're able to have, every student is able to have their own Chromebook, where we didn't have that in the spring. And now we also have a lot more programs that are on web, that are web-based, as far as textbooks and novels and materials and assessment materials that we didn't have in the spring, just because we weren't expecting to be out for the rest of the year. So I think we're a little bit more prepared now in the fall. We're ready to go back in, and we can kind of just pick up wherever we leave off.
So from your perspective, being in the school, but also having an administrative role, how, it sounds like, the issues at first were just, we need devices, and we need more resources. How did that information make its way to you, and how did you act on that? How did you make that happen for your
so at first
kids?
It was a lot of the teachers really were the point of contacts. We are in our school, we have over 900 students, so we really depend on the teachers to kind of make that contact. And between the admin team, we each took a grade level, and then the teachers, we would actually make physical phone calls to the parents to make sure the kids can get on. I mean, we had students on iPhones, on iPads. We had students who had no technology. So a lot of the work was given over the phone. So we were kind of just starting from scratch at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, just trying to get them on. So we were, we had kids that could not do Zoom, but would have like packets of work that they could complete. But, nobody was expecting it to go more than a month or 2 weeks. So once we realized we weren't going back, we really just kind of had to just on the phone. We would go at night, we would have phone calls at night. I mean, we have teachers that were working 10, 12-hour days, just trying to get in touch with all the students. That was the hardest part, just knowing that the kids were okay and then they were somewhere and that you can reach out to them.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've heard from my own son, my son's in pre-K, and I've heard from his principal and some of my partners in New Jersey is, we were afforded a lot of grace in the spring, but that maybe had worn thin a little bit when we got to the fall. So, lessons learned, we adapted to some things in the spring. How did the rollout then go in the fall?
I think in the fall, I think once parents understood like this is serious and like the kids have to get on, the kids have to do the work, the parents are responsible. I think we have a much better rate of kids getting on daily, even if they just had an iPad, an iPhone. Our district did the right thing. We ordered enough Chromebooks at the end of the school year, but unfortunately, because every district in America probably was ordering Chromebooks, we didn't get them till, the middle of October. So at this point now we're in a good spot. Everyone, all the students have accessibility to Chromebooks. And in our district, we were able to also get free Wi-Fi for our kids. So even if the parents can't afford Wi-Fi, they have in the town, you can get the free optimum Wi-Fi. So that helped a lot. And now, we have our dean of students who are kind of like doing discipline. If they don't go on, we make phone calls. We're sending warnings. So it's a little bit more structured, like like school. We'll go in a classroom and the dean will come in and he'll do a breakout session and talk to the student on the side and say, listen, you have to complete your assignments. And teachers are able to report that. We have the Google Forms that they send to the dean of students when there's issues with work completion or attending Zooms. So we're trying to work in the same system that we would work on a regular day. And that's kind of helped us a lot. There's still going to be that 10, 50% of kids that don't get on. We have a lot of kids that go to daycares because our parents have to go to work. So we have about, I'm going to say, I think right now we have about 4 daycares that we can walk to from our school, that we literally walk to the school, bring them headphones. When they can't get on, we'll walk over, we'll log the kids in, come back to school because our admin team is in the building, just trying to get them to do the work. And it's hard because if you're sitting in a daycare and there's 15 kids Zooming at the same time, you can just imagine the noise level for the kids to be able to focus. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So a lot of our kids aren't able to be home because the parents have to work.
Yep. Yeah. And so one of the things, and we can go to question 2 here because this kind of dovetails into it. One of the things that everybody was talking about in the spring when we started to go our separate ways and things got shut down was this, perceived learning loss. And, I think there was no doubt at that time, and even now, that, there are challenges there, but what's the reality of that for your students that have come back and maybe didn't totally wrap up their previous school year in a traditional sense?
I think one of the challenges we have, we have also a large ELL population in our school. So we noticed a lot of even language loss. Some of our kids that we saw would start to progress learning English and are regressing because they are home and they're not having that social interaction with each other, with the teachers, with all the different faculty in school. So we notice a lot of our ELL students aren't thriving as much as they would if they were in the classroom. So we've noticed that challenge, and we kind of just noticing that now in September, not really thinking too much about it in the spring, and we're noticing it now with the kids who were doing well last year, and now they're in an English classroom. They're not doing as well as they probably would have if they were actually coming to school every day and practicing, speaking in English, writing and reading in English.
Isn't it amazing, all these temperature checks we've had to, it's like temperature checks with like 20 different thermometers going all at once, and then how these things rise to the top. I hadn't even thought about language loss as being one of those key factors, but yeah, that's pretty remarkable. And it sounds like you've just had to, get creative and adapt. And I mean, we've all been doing it, but there's a lot of layers there, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, let's actually move on to the next question, just within the realm of learning loss. Kind of similar question here, but has anything been outside of the realm of what you expected?
No.
Yeah. Kind of Captain Obvious question there, right?
It's actually even more difficult to really gauge it because the
Yeah.
kids are home, and any kind of test or, any kind of assessments that we're doing with the students, it's a different setting, right? So they're not in a classroom, they're not with their fellow students, they're not with a teacher, they're kind of at home. And, we only see the camera. You don't really know what's going on around them. So are they really working up to their potential on those assessments? We don't know. Are the parents completing the assessments? I don't know. It's hard to gauge the growth or what they don't know, because every exam or every assessment is questioned as to far like how valid is it. So it's hard to gauge. I mean, as far as when we talk to the
Stop
teachers,
presenting. We're gonna get the code for you. Hold on.
as far as talking to the teachers, normally on a normal year, every grade level, every teacher's like, oh, the kids are so low, they're so low on a normal year, just because the teachers are used to how their kids left at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, that's just a normal thing that happens, especially in elementary. Every year it's the same complaint, the kids are low. But this year, they see a new perspective, and we tried to explain to them, remember, they really have a huge gap. It's not just a summer gap. We're talking about a gap from March to September. We have to be empathetic and understand that they're going to be behind. So we're focusing a lot on the foundational skills with them. And the teachers are letting me know, like, the kids are really, really behind, even just a foundation, just not practicing what they were already learning last year. So I think the loss we expected is there. It's just hard to gauge it and assess it sometimes with them being at home.
Well,
Yeah, I wonder. Oh, go ahead, Lindsay.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, like, there's so many pieces to it. Even something as simple as, a child's working from home and their parents are instructing them what to do versus a teacher, right? Where they're not gonna necessarily respect what their parents are saying as much as they would with a teacher. And that's even just a struggle and a hump that everyone has to get over. And I'm curious too, since you're K-6, if there's anyone on the call who, if maybe there's a little bit of a different perspective with the secondary levels, if anybody works with secondary levels, and if they've noticed any other types of learning loss that maybe you were expected or didn't expect with COVID. Because like you said, this is going on almost a year at this point. It's not just that summer learning loss anymore.
I mean, I've only heard from my colleagues that do teach at the high school that some high school kids are actually doing better. And I don't know, it's because they're able to be more independent, whereas I think the little guys need a lot more assistance just to even get on the computer on a daily basis. A 5-6-year-old trying to go from the Zoom, okay, put the screen to the side, open up this, go into that, that alone is a process in itself. So I don't know how secondary is doing as far as the lag. But I'm sure they're, it's very similar, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually heard that also, where some students are really, the older students are really like thriving with this.
Mm-hmm.
There was a story that an old colleague talked about where, and this was before COVID, but it's still virtual learning. And, one of the high school students, he was just killing it, right? Because there's so much more ownership when you have to do this. And, you could do things more at your own pace when you're working virtually. And he wasn't doing well normally, and he was just excelling in virtual learning. And the superintendent tapped him on the shoulder and was just like, why? Like, why is this better for you than, working in the traditional classroom? He was like, because I don't have people like you tapping me on the shoulder. So it's just, but it's so true, right? So I think those younger kiddos, like, it's a struggle, like you said, even just to log in, right? Just different passwords, especially there's a lot of districts who don't have single sign-on and things like that. So, maybe those are some of the hurdles that those older students don't have. So yeah. Sorry.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Sheila, I'm curious about then when we're talking about setting expectations and kind of redefining, redefining what growth means and redefining, what this school year is going to mean. How does that then trickle to the community and parents? I mean, I thought about, we've talked a great deal about just working with teachers and working with your students and getting that feedback and having all these temperature checks, but how does that roll out then to the community and parents?
I think in our community, we're in an urban district, and we have a lot of parents that we have great parents. It's just parents that have to work. We have a lot of parents that have multiple jobs. We have parents that go to work at 6 and they'll log the kids in at 6 o'clock in the morning, just so it's on, so that when the kids wake up or their neighbor wakes the kids up, they can get on. So I think our parents, they want to be there to help them, and some are not capable, and that's okay. But they're still great parents. And I think what we've tried to do like nighttime meetings with our parents. We've tried to do training with our parents to show them how to log in. We use something called ClassLink, which is a one sign-on kind of program. So we've taught the parents how to log in, so they can kind of see what the kids are doing and what those expectations are. But baby steps, and they'll come when we do night meetings. They do come. We do get big turnouts for Zooms, and they appreciate it. It's just, it's just for them, it's very difficult, especially if they're not with their kids during the day. A lot of kids go to the neighbor's house. We'll have one mom that stays home will take 7 kids, and everybody else will go to work. It's, those are some of the hurdles. They want to help. They want to be there. They want their kids to do well. Just sometimes, unfortunately, some of the circumstances don't allow them to help them the way they want to help them. For us, language is a big issue. We try to translate as much as we can, but a lot of the online programs, they're not in Spanish because the kids speak both languages, but the parents might only speak Spanish.
Right.
So we're having a lot of issues with that.
And that also plays a part in even just the parents instructing their children how to do anything, right?
Math is always, even math is an issue because we do a lot of writing in math now.
Yeah.
And then, we'll have parents that call, we have, they can call, we always have people in school, in the office. And I have parents that call sometimes and ask me, well, why they had to do math this way? When I went, in my country,
when I was in school,
they did math this way. No, I know. It's faster if I just put the two numbers together, and I know, but you got to show, you have to show the work and things like that. So they want their kids to be successful, but it's difficult.
Yeah. And I actually, I kind of want to go just into the chat really quick, because everyone has some really good points that they're bringing up. M. Haynes said that some students are doing better at secondary level. However, there's also several of their students have regressed because of lack of participation. And there's a lot more emotional issues. I mean, SEL is just.
That's a whole other panel.
That's
a whole other panel.
That's a whole other thing. But I mean, that's huge.
That's like a weekly series.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's so important, and it's so pressing right now, because you also have to think about, not only are they dealing with the emotional and social struggles of virtual learning and not being able to see everyone, and there's so many pieces to that, but there's also New Jersey got hit hard, and they're getting hit hard all over again. So do they know anyone personally that's struggling with COVID? And there's just so many layers of things that they just, it's hard.
Yeah, we think about and we plan when the kids do come back, what that's going to look like. We're used to the first day of school, kindergarten kids crying, we're used to, what is it going to look like when these kids actually have to leave and come to school every day? How many kids are scared just because of what they read, what they watch on TV, how many, that whole transition itself, it's going to be, if this is going on for a year and a half, what is that going to look like on the first day of school for these kids?
Yeah.
Personally, and the ones that are home with mom, and you've been home with mom for a year and a half, and you haven't been socially active with your friends. It's just that developmental piece is going to be missing. And we're going to have to learn how to address that outside of the academics, because you can't learn if you're not present.
Yep. Well, something simple as, and I want to get back to the chat too, but I could just use my daughter as an example too. I mean, she's 4. She's 5 now, but she was 4 when this all started. So she can't communicate any of her feelings or, anything like that. But she started wetting the bed again and started doing these little things that I'm like, oh my God, the thought of virtual learning for you right now and not being social, she has a lot of social anxiety, and there's just so many pieces, so many layers. And someone also brought up not only the emotional issues, but the economic issues as well, especially at that secondary level where they have to take on the burden of paying rent or, providing for their family. So all of a sudden they're trying to be a full-time student and trying to be a full-time employee basically to help their parents.
Yeah. We have a lot of secondary kids who are home with their siblings. And, while they're trying to learn, they have a 7-year-old brother, a 9-year-old sister, and every time they're having an issue, they go to the older sibling who's supposed to be in their classes. So, it builds that whole, they can't focus because they're worried about their siblings. We have a lot of siblings home alone with their the secondary student.
Yeah. And then also another really good point is that there's no structure anymore. Right? That's huge for any age student or any age adult, to be honest with you, right? I like structure in my life. So to not have that all of a sudden, that just can really, I don't know, just disrupt everything. I said earlier that like throwing a wrench in your life is like the motto of 2020. So, all right, do you want to go on to question 4? And
Yeah.
also, I know that I'm monitoring the chat, but if anybody wants to not only chat in, but if they want to get off mute and add anything too, please feel free.
Yeah, and just looking ahead at the question, I mean, we sat down, we were really focused on learning loss, but I think a lot of even bigger factors, not even just like tertiary things, but these are major things that we've uncovered, and it's been nice to talk about. And so I think this question kind of dials us back into kind of the nitty gritty of how we're going to pull off this school year and get the work done. Have you seen a huge shift in your instructional strategies, or are there specifics that are just ringing the bell and working for you guys, or what are the instructional strategies that
for
working?
math, we're focusing a lot on foundational math, working on standards from the year before, and kind of like almost like work where they are, like work where the kids are, and at the same time try to teach where they should be, and kind of going a back and forth between the classes. We're doing a lot more small group instruction, a lot of breakouts. We were very blessed to be able to reduce our classroom sizes to 15 to 16, 15 kids in a room. Because we were planning for the kids to come back. So we had made the homeroom sizes smaller, and having 15 kids in a class really enables the teacher to really get down and dirty with the kids as far as like where each student is, what each individual needs are. We have classrooms of teachers are working on 2 to 3 different levels of math, and in language arts, same thing. We work a lot in small groups. While some kids are doing independent work, we have working in small groups at what level their kids are, and just trying to grow from where they are, as opposed to just trying to keep shoving information down when they don't even have the foundation to get that information.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people were even struggling, trying to use something that was like a diagnostic at the beginning of the year. You do your stock, entry diagnostic, but it's even if delivering that virtually is really challenging. There's a lot of challenges just validating that data, and it also those are adaptive tests. They're not summatives, and there's a lot of confusion around that between parents and students, and why did I take the diagnostic for 45 minutes and this other person took it for a half an hour? And was there anything you guys did before the school year to kind of get those like skill level diagnostics out of the way? Or
we actually just did our exact path diagnostic at the beginning of November. But in the beginning of the school year, we used a program called Dora, and Atom, and we use that just to and that and that's when we noticed a lot of kids were not doing well, and a lot of it was because of network issues and device issues. So we kind of just did that for the teachers, but a lot of the teachers are doing actual assessments on their own in their own classrooms, and just kind of assessing them from there using our benchmarks, using our last year fourth marking period benchmarks, and seeing where they are. I think now that we know every student has a device, internet is up and running, we're kind of almost starting at this point in November, the beginning of November, and really kind of like taking off from there. I think the first month, I don't want to say it was a wash, but I'm going to say it was very difficult to do it because we were still trying to find students. We were trying to get kids to sign on, who wasn't, we couldn't find, who wasn't ever signing on. The phone numbers didn't work. It just took us so long to get to that setup just because we were expecting the kids to come back. And then when we unfortunately, I want to say, I think it was a week or two before school started, we were told we were going to be full remote, and we kind of had to go backwards. Do you know what I mean? So, so we had to kind of like jump real quick and just try to get it going. And that kind of took us a little bit to get it going with that.
Well, it's almost like that first week of school, it's always kind of like a regroup and, hey, we're doing school again, and get everybody's brains switched back on. But then when you have a moving target and COVID and all these unknowns, I don't think anybody is going to look back and be like, man, I wish we got more more academics done in October or September. I think everybody, has had to deal with that on their own level, for their own building, for their own classrooms.
Yeah, even just in training the teachers, like all the new technology, it's a lot, So just teaching the teachers how to use certain programs, using all the, using everything that's new that we were able to purchase, which are great programs, but obviously, it's only as good as the person who's going to use it. So you want to teach them how to use and how to incorporate it. So just even the teachers themselves, I feel bad for them because it's a lot of learning on their part. And at the same time, they're just kind of like teaching at the same time, trying to learn at the same time, and not having that time to plan.
Yeah.
But I think now, now everybody's feeling a lot more comfortable. People are using programs that we've purchased that are great. And, now we're starting to see like the positive remarks from the teachers, like, oh, this is great. This saves me here. This saves me there. So, I mean, I think we're on the right path. So that makes me feel better.
Yeah, that's great.
And that kind of leads right into one of the chat entries where they said that it's different, obviously, right, for secondary and specifically vocational schools too. Like they are hybrid, so they didn't close at all this year. It wasn't even, I guess, an option if you want to jump off of mute too and jump in. But PD, right? PD is huge because you have to teach. I mean, teachers are great, but this is new to them as well. So what are different ways that you can help engage your students, right? And really focus in, like you just said, on that PD for them, because this is, just a new battle that everyone has to get with, especially with the vocational school too. I can't even imagine that. And then someone else also said that a way that what they do to help engage their students, they use Kahoot. So that's, I'm a big fan of Kahoot or anything that's gamified. I think, I don't care if they're older students, secondary students, younger students, anything gamified, a little competition that always helps any students become more engaged. And then she also said that they offer office hours for 45 minutes at the end of the day to help extra check-ins, extra help, assignments. And that typically she said that they go over 45 minutes. So that means students are actually taking, they're taking advantage of this.
So, Lindsay, before you go on to the next one, I did want to share about the office hours, because I have seen a couple of districts do office hours, not necessarily for academic help, but we've been talking a little bit about the social and emotional supports. And so they've been assigning guidance counselors to different classrooms and having a period a week after the academic time, kind of like that 45-minute session, where they'll just have the class check in and let the students know that they can come to them. And some districts have even synthesized it so that they're also doing like a monthly for the parents on particular topics, just trying to check in and make sure everybody's safe and feeling good. So I just wanted to add that as we were talking about there's a lot you can do with adding on towards the end of the day to help the students.
Yeah. Yeah, good plug. All right. Lizzie, did you have anything else from the chat that you wanted to share?
Yeah, we're still, first of all, guys, thank you for adding to the chat.
Yeah, bring it on. Yeah.
And I actually would like to ask, and I apologize, I can't say your name. It looks like Pac Rodas, but I'm not keen on the, I'm not yeah, I'm not good at pronouncing things. But I would love, if you don't mind, getting off of mute and kind of talking a little bit about your struggles and, you know, some of the ways that you've overcome that at the vocational school as well.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
What's your name? I'm sorry.
Sonia Paproda, Sunny.
Sunny.
Paproda.
Okay.
Paproda. Yeah, we have several campuses, and so our school never closed this year. We started bigger than we are at now. We go an A-B schedule, so we separated it into cohorts grade level wise. So we have green days and gold days because our school colors are green and gold. And so we have 2 grade levels every day. They do all of their shops when they're in person. And then on the alternate day, they do all their academics. So we have an in-school shop class, but what's happening is that we're pulling them from shops. Their academic teachers get to pull the kids who show up in real life, and we're pulling them from shops and we're giving them extra help in person also, as well as online. So we've continued our help sessions, and we have RTI ongoing. So we are doing that virtually as well as in real life, and the kids are doing it together too at the same time. So they actually have their own little cohorts and groups. That seems to be working. And it's also our way of tracing.
Right.
Yeah.
So because we're keeping them in cohorts, so it's a good way to trace.
And how big are those groups?
It depends. Right now, we're still going through rotations for the freshmen. So what that means is that in order for them to figure out the best match, shall we say, they rotate every so many days. We've had to expand that because they're only here a couple of days a week. So some of the groups are 20.
Wow.
It depends, but some of the groups are 5. So it depends. But it's interesting that we also have a couple of teachers who are remote. Their students still come to school because they don't want to be home all day. The majority of the kids honestly don't want to be home.
Right.
We have a 60-40 ratio probably of in-school kids versus virtual. And the ones that are in school are doing a little bit better, even though they're not doing their academics teachers, they're only doing shops, but the academic teachers are pulling them. They're investing time in them. They're giving them extra help, and it works. So it's been hard, but we never closed. And that, I think, is to the teachers' credit too. They put a lot into this. And that goes to one of the things I was going to mention also. We keep talking about the kids, but we are also focusing on the teachers and their morale.
Yeah.
I'll mute myself now.
No,
thank you. That's
yeah.
Yeah. It's great to hear. I mean, everybody's got, it's like choose your own adventure on steroids with all of this. And I can't imagine. I know I come from, my background is in music education, and I've had to see all of my music teacher friends completely rethink how they're going to do all this. And then you think about the loss of winter concerts, holiday concerts, all the activities. It's just
Like prom
just-
was canceled last week.
right. Yep. Just all of these layers of things. So it's nice to hear a little bit more of just these different, nooks and crannies that I haven't thought about as much. So
Yeah, and it's true too. I think that was a really good point, Yes, we need to focus on the students obviously too, but we can't, negate the teachers. I mean, they're ones leading the pack and, they need their mental health and it's so hard.
yeah, absolutely. Let's move into question 5, and I'm really curious about this as far as what we've learned. And Sheila, I'll bring it back to you. What are the future plans that you have? Sorry about that. What are your future plans in terms of just, I mean, it's got to be hard with what we've been given. And, I guess this is more just a retrospective of just like, what did you learn last year? And, how do you move forward with that information and try to avoid losses or, the hiccups in the road?
I think, well, from last year to last spring, we didn't require the kids to be online all day. So that's one major thing that we learned from the last year to this year. Now our kids are on from 8 to 2 every day with a lunch break. I think that that's one of the big lessons that we learned from last year. And, and obviously last year, I think everything was kind of like, let's just, by the time, you started and you didn't know when it was going to end and you're coming back. But I think now we're kind of set up in a way where the kids are online a little bit longer and they follow a structured schedule. They go to their specials. It's as close to being in school as possible. We've learned that structure for them is super important, that we didn't have that in the spring. So I think that is a big piece for us. I think also being able to manipulate a Zoom session in order to make it like a classroom setting with having a small group instruction, doing centers, things like that have helped us a lot. Just trying to make them feel that that's the classroom, because we always in the mode that they'll come back, they're gonna come back, that when they do come back, you want them to follow that same setup without having to start all over again with the kids. Because especially for the little ones, structure for them is everything. So if they know they have gym on Tuesdays, if they come back to school, they better have gym on Tuesdays. So, I think for them that structure piece was a big piece that I think that we learned from the spring that we needed to make sure for the fall they had that.
Yeah, I know one thing. So my son is in pre-K, and I'm in Minnesota, and our district, it's St. Paul Public Schools, a large urban school district, and they made the call pretty early that they were going to push out virtual to January, and now it's actually pushed out to February. But one of the things they did very quickly, especially for the little ones, is they gave everybody an iPad over the summer to prep for school, but they realized very quickly that the 100% virtual for those kiddos, they needed manipulatives, they needed stylus for all the handwriting. They couldn't just draw on the screen. They having all of those things that you teach at those levels. It just they had to call an audible, and they adapted really, really quickly. And I don't know how they did it so quickly. We had manipulatives delivered to our house within 2 weeks of the beginning of the school year. So that feedback made it back clearly. There seems like there's a strong culture within that school where that teacher feedback goes straight up, and we're able to, call those audibles as quickly as possible and make it happen.
Teachers have become very good at using a lot of household goods as manipulatives, just because our school is so big. We wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
Using pasta, I mean, just you name it, the teachers will, especially our kindergarten teachers, they'll tell the parents, okay, start collecting, cut the squares from the toilet paper, count how many squares you have, just something like that becomes a manipulative because you have it at home.
Go find a yellow leaf, go find a red leaf, go find a brown leaf. Yep.
all the things that sometimes when you're in school, you wish you could do, you're able to do because they're home.
Right. Yeah.
Try to make it. But I know for our district, pre-K and K aren't allowed to be online all day. They're only allowed an hour a day of instructional time on screen.
Yeah.
And there's specials for the day, just because of the on screen for the little ones, it's a lot for them.
Yeah.
So, they have a lot of things that they have to do on their own, and then bring it the next day, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lindsay, let's go on to question 6. This will be our last question, and then we'll discuss and then open it up for a little bit of discussion and wrap up here at the end. But
Yeah, I just real quick before we move on, I just wanted some
yeah,
people are just talking in the chat, and they had to help parents get basics, right? Paper, pencils, headphones. Headphones are a huge thing, I feel like. I mean, you had said earlier, Sheila, that some people, you had to walk to the daycares and give headphones out. Some of the kids had absolutely nothing, Karen also said ongoing support and listening, that they have parents picking up materials every 2 weeks. So, elementary teachers are providing those packets, whiteboards, markers, et cetera. So it seems like just all this basic, things that you just are given almost in a classroom, right? That it's not there at home. And then teachers are also focusing on the most crucial materials for the curriculum. So that's what M. Haynes said. Teachers facilitate Google meetings and live stream the session so that virtual students are present. And they utilize the chat and breakouts, and they use Ed Puzzles as well as other platforms. So, just trying to think outside the box and trying to do whatever they can to make, students present. And like you said too, especially those younger kids, they can't be on for that long. I mean, I can't imagine my daughter being on from 8 to 3. So yeah.
We learned so funny about this breakout room. We learned right away. We didn't even think about it when the teachers were breaking into breakout rooms, not thinking about what the kids were doing in the other room.
Right.
So that was a lesson learned very, very quickly, because they would come back and the kids were like, he said this and he said that. I'm like, oh no. So now everybody goes to the waiting room. So, just little things like that you don't even, it's like leaving kids alone in a room. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
So,
and I think actually, someone said earlier in the chat too, that they were using, co-teachers to help with those breakout sessions, and, hiring subs, to help with that. Because you don't know what they're doing if you're not there. You have to be there.
Now we put them in the waiting room by themselves.
Yeah. Karen just said instructional aids for the breakouts as well.
Well, that's the other issue, the instructional aids, that, that means you have to get them devices, you have to get them Wi-Fi, it's like a whole, they never had that before. Our classmates don't have computers, so that's like another piece for them too.
Yeah, and then another point that Mindy brought up is the middle schoolers have had to build up stamina, right? It's the same thing as reading, right? You have to build the stamina in order to sit down and read a book for 30 minutes. You can't do that right off the bat, especially if you're not, if you're still learning those foundational skills. So the same thing for this, you have to build stamina. And that's the thing. I feel like COVID happened, and then overnight, everyone just expected everyone to be able to adapt, and that's not reality. So I know, sorry, Matt, you wanted to go on to question 6.
No, you're good. This is all great.
This is really great conversation that everyone, is participating in. Yeah.
So I'll try to land the plane here. I was speaking with the mentor a couple of weeks ago, a principal, and he said, I think there's a lot of people that they're just trying to survive, which is totally understandable. But, educators can also thrive in any situation. And it's one of the most creative fields, if not the most creative field on the planet. So, are there things that that you've learned that you think you're going to move forward with from this year? You know, not COVID adjusted, just wow, we should have been doing this always.
Oh, I think the not having books. I think not having actual books is great. I mean, where my son goes to school, he hasn't had a textbook since 5th grade, you know, and they had Chromebooks and all of their books and everything was on a Chromebook, and they always had access to it. And instead of carrying that backpack with the 15 books in it, everything was in one place. I think that that's something that, you know, I wouldn't mind not going back to having, you know, a novel I think is different. I like reading a book in a book. I don't like Kindles. I like having a book to read. But I think, you know, for a math textbook and things like that, I don't see us going back to having those 350-page math textbooks.
Yeah.
You know, so some of those things I think are great. I think Google Classroom will always stay. I think that teachers now, especially, you know, we were just getting on it a few years ago on the elementary level for Google Classroom, and it was kind of like, you know, try use it. Now that they're using it and they were full in it, it's something I think that they'll always use. And, you know, we're lucky, we also use a program called Schoology, which is great. It's, you know, it's like the next level to Google Classroom. And I think at first it was like, you get the fight, like, no, nothing new. And now that they're using it, you know, you create everything on there. Your assessment is connected to our grading program, to our Power School, and, you know, it goes from one place to the other. So it's more mainstream. I think there's a lot of things that we'll take from it that we can use when we're back in the classroom, you know, and we'll never have a snow day again.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, you know, how, you know, we develop these biases or even just blocks on, you know, we got to have a math textbook. You know, the issue's been forced, right, for a lot of people. So yeah, that's great feedback, and yeah, we will never have a snow day. Although
I like a snow day, but you know.
no, I'm here in Minnesota, and we have a decent amount of snow days, and they actually said, yeah, we're still gonna have snow days. We're still gonna give everybody the ritual of a snow day from time to time, and not make people work virtually.
Yeah. In New Jersey, we like to get out a little bit earlier in June. That's all.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Well, Lindsay, did you see anything else here in the chat for us?
No, well, Karen just said snow days will be needed for mental health breaks.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And then Mindy also said, just looking at student learning and being more aware of mental health issues as reasons for behaviors. That was something that they learned, you know, that was a permanent change, that you don't need COVID for you to really kind of tap into that. Yeah, and Karen just said that she agrees with the snow days as well. I believe, right, there was a superintendent who went viral on Barstool Sports.
Yes, he did.
That said he was not getting rid of snow days. He won't do it. So, and I agree with that. I mean, everyone needs a snow day.
It's a ritual, and
Yeah.
we are owed at least a couple a year.
Right, the kids want to wear their pajamas inside out. I still do that just to make sure we have a snow day, you know.
I will definitely have snow days.
And Karen also said SEL, just in general. That's yeah, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
You got to think of the whole child.
And with the SEL, that is a lot of training on the teachers, you know, teaching them how to incorporate that into their day. That's something that we were working on last year when we were in school, incorporating. We had created an SEL time for every day in our schedule. And we were just beginning to train the teachers on activities and how to incorporate it and daily things to do for SEL. And we just kind of got cut with that. And now it's like a whole different approach to SEL. Yeah, but that's definitely going to be, I mean, even for our teachers, like even when the teachers did come back for a couple of weeks, they were scared. They were like physically scared to come back in the building. And I get it. And
yeah,
I understood it. You know, they've been home since March also, the same, you know, same thing. So I get that. It's going to be on both sides.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I'm curious, I know we are pretty much at time, but is there, what's everyone doing for SEL just in general? Because that is, such a big piece of all of this now. Or is there anything that any schools, districts have in place to help with that? Please feel free to get off of mute if you want. I know I'm throwing a question out that was not planned, but I'm just curious because it's this is a theme that keeps popping up today. And it really does go hand in hand.
We're just doing what we normally try to do, the 10-minute SEL time a day, whether it's yoga, discussion, scenarios, things like that. Just the things that we had trained them on last year, just to dedicate some time. Sometimes SEL can just be the kids just talking about their day and just what they're feeling. And, does it feel, why are you angry, or things like that. They do anchor charts to go with it. And we try to just tell them to incorporate at least 10 minutes a day and, and kind of assess where the kids are. Sometimes, they just want to be reassured,
Yeah.
that it's going to be okay. And that,
And
so.
they're not alone in the way they're thinking either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Karen said that they're integrating SEL into their daily practice. They have a district goal for their staff, and the elementary counselors are providing formal lessons. So pulling in those counselors during this time. CSM, they have the Sanford Harmony program, which I've never heard of actually. So that's interesting. And I know that there's other platforms. We have base education as well for that. And then Karen also said we're focusing on the competency each marking period.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will turn it over to Matt and Sheila Miller. I know you guys want, if you have any closing remarks.
No, well, just thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sheila, for taking fire here and helping us, kind of wrap our brains around and share out things that have been working for you. Super helpful. Sheila, did you have a plug here or anything you wanted to talk about before we close it off?
My plug was to say thank you to Sheila, first of all, and thank you for all of our participants today for being so interactive. I think this webinar does go to show that perhaps it was the right time for us to bring back these PLCs to give everybody a chance to learn from each other. Things keep changing, as we know, so maybe we'll have to get back at this maybe in 2021, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe not another PLC right now, but if anybody wants to stay on and talk further with Matt, Lindsay, or I, feel free to.
Yeah, and if you guys have ideas for, like we said, we could do a weekly on SEL, right? If you have topics that you'd like for us to discuss, and we definitely have a lot of experts here that we can reach out to, whether it's, how to analyze data a little bit clearer, or maybe it's an SEL thing, maybe it's ELLs. If you have any topics, please put that into the chat on your way out. We'll save that and take a look at that. But thank you, everybody, for carving out this time today. Thanks again, Sheila. And we'll stay on here just for a little bit if you guys have questions, all right?
Oh, I think you can stop recording, Lindsay.
Matt, that's Matt.
Oh,
I got
Matt.
it.
I'm sharing my screen.